Hello everyone, welcome back. This is episode 2 of Nintendo Everything Refresh. We all returned for at least one more episode. We thought the first one went so well, we decided to come back and do another one. We've got the usual gang so far. We've got Dennis.
Hello, hello.
We have got Luiz.
Hey everyone, happy to be back here.
And we have got Nicolas.
Hello, everyone.
And another exciting update, we are now available to listen to and stream on all major podcast platforms. That means Spotify, Apple Music, Audible, Amazon Music. Hopefully Google Podcasts will be live by the time that you are listening to this. So if you don't want to listen to us on YouTube, go check us out on the streaming platform of your choice. It is very, very exciting that we are now available lots of places for your convenience. All right, it has been a surprisingly big news week, everyone. I think something might have happened with this game called Breath of the Wild 2. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. Oh, I'm sorry. The sequel to Breath of the Wild.
Actually, I'll have you know now it's the Legend of Breath of the Wild sequel. Very different.
I really want to know the official name already.
It's great.
Who knows if they may not even know the name. I'm not convinced at this point.
Well, what was it? I think I read an article not long ago where it's like they do have a name for it, but the reason why they haven't said anything is because it'll kind of spoil the story. But I'm like,
Oh, Numa said that.
Yeah, that's right.
They have some more time to figure it out because the game has been delayed to spring 2023. Which,
honestly, I don't know if anybody else. I'm sure everyone, a lot of other people, saw that coming. But I was set in stone, and this game's not coming out this year. Not after that direct that happened not long ago, where they're like, "This is everything that's coming out in 2022," and I'm like, "You don't need Breath of the Wild," because honestly, Breath of the Wild needs the space all to itself, and you don't want with insane amount of stuff that Nintendo has coming out this year alone, even from just from what they've announced, and never mind, E3 season, which isn't happening, but we'll talk about that. And everything else throughout the year. I mean, we're not even halfway through the year, and there's still, plenty more, that Nintendo could just show off and talk about. But so Breath of the Wild, it doesn't need to come out this year. Let it have a space all to its own. Otherwise, Nintendo's just competing with itself, right? Where you're just gonna have banger after banger.
Yeah.
And, it's too much. It's too much.
yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, we've already got this fall. I may even be missing a few, but off the top of my head, we've already got Xenoblade 3 coming out. We've already got a new Pokemon game coming out. I mean, that alone right there is enough to carry them through the holiday season. But they were saying they needed some more time for the game, which is crazy to me because, I mean, the original Breath of the Wild came out 2017, which by the time this one comes out, that'll be 6 years.
Yeah, I wonder if it's because they're also sort of waiting. I mean, I don't think it's going to come out this year, but, in 2021, we saw the release of the Switch OLED, right? So, and there's always going to be rumors kind of circulating, but we're now having rumors start up again of a potential Switch Pro, right? So I think that'll probably more than likely come out in 2023, if not 2024. But if anything's going to sell Switch Pro consoles, it would be, once again, Breath of the Wild, just like the first one did with the regular model Switch. So.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a possibility. There have been rumors about a Switch Pro since before the original Switch even came out, it feels like.
True.
It'll happen eventually, I'm sure, but it's so funny to me that, when they announced the delay for this game, they didn't say it was a delay. Their video, they called it a launch timing update video on YouTube. Just the most Nintendo thing.
I think it's that kind of thing. I think if they needed to release the game that this year, they probably would release. But how it goes with gaming development, I think extra time is always a good thing. And knowing that Nintendo always like to take their time to develop a Zelda game, even if it is realizing a lot of facets, even if it is running on the same engine, I think they are really creating a new experience here. I don't think it's just like an expansion of Breath of the Wild. I think what they are producing here is really big. Aonuma even said in the video that they are really putting a lot of new things, a lot of new gameplay elements. So I'm really excited to see how they will upgrade. Because even though Breath of the Wild is probably one of the best games ever made, and I think a lot of people agree on that, a lot of people also had not exactly issues, but there are a lot of things on Breath of the Wild that we can, I think we can improve. We can bring new ideas on the story department, trying to make the world more put more variety in the activities that you can do on the world. So I'm really excited. Of course, it's a little sad to see the delay and all of that, but I'm really excited to see what they are doing with this game, what they are preparing to take that long. Of course, I also should mention that COVID happened during the development, so that's
True.
probably one of the reasons why the game is taking so long. But
Yeah, no,
I don't think
a
it's
great
a
point.
huge issue.
Yeah, and I'm not really super plugged in about this, but I mean, even various parts of the world are at various stages of functionality right now because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
So maybe the situation in Japan is really different. Maybe a lot of folks are still working from home, and maybe that's a factor in needing more time in this game. I hadn't even thought about that personally.
Yeah, I think I still feel for the most part it's that they've definitely, as mentioned, they don't have much pressure to release the game for this holiday season. They could probably market it next year as coming out on the 6th anniversary of Breath of the Wild and releasing it sometime in March.
Yeah.
So they're probably, I would assume they're not like, this isn't a 100% necessary delay because they just cannot get the game out. Like, this is very much them
Right.
saying, hey, we're going to use a little bit more time, we're going to spread things out, we're going to make a release schedule a little less bloated.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, Xenoblade 3 is going to be a huge title that I've seen a lot of people be thankful for, that Breath of the Wild sequel is not coming out within months of that. There's going to be another Pokemon RPG, there's going to be possibly Bayonetta. Like, they're still doing fine. And plus, they, for the real big Zelda enthusiasts, they even put a new little story clip in the trailer, where I guess the launch timing update,
Yeah.
just to
seconds.
get conversation going. Like, yeah, literally 2 seconds. But this huge reveal of, like, the Master Sword and Link presumably having the Triforce in his hand, that immediately got people talking about that, rather than be upset about the delay, which was also pretty clever in my opinion.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
it
love
was
it.
very good damage control.
It's a good way to
They
spin
had
it.
to show something.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people were talking about that, and I'm with you, Luiz. I really do hope that there's a little more story in this game. I know not everyone is going to agree with me on that, but that was one of the big things that I think kept me from enjoying Breath of the Wild more than I did, was just I found it a little bit harder to get invested in the stakes of what was going on because of the story.
Yeah. Honestly,
Yeah.
like, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I'm big on story, right? Like, I'm 100% with you. Where, like, I'm big on story. Like, if like a game needs to, first and foremost, to me, have a great story, and that's really what draws me in. Obviously, the gameplay itself is important as well, but it needs to have a big story for me to get in. With the way it was sort of presented in Breath of the Wild, I mean, you regained your memories in a non-linear fashion, right? So you can gain these memories in
Right.
any sorts of ways, depending on where you're going, the direction that you're going, because the world is completely open, right? Hyrule is your playground to play around with. It's never been done like this before. Once you're out of that cave, I mean, you got to do the initial, couple of shrines, but after that, it's open. It's open. You go wherever you want. But I think the way that Breath of the Wild sort of slowly uncovered its storytelling, that sense of mystery and wonderment, I think, is actually what drew me in closer. Interestingly enough, even though I'm like the big story guy, finding that story for myself was also part of the excitement in Breath of the Wild. So it was weird how that worked. Because I'm with you 100%.
Yeah,
but
no,
it's-
that's a really, I think a lot of people were definitely able to appreciate just kind of the free form, chart your own path, you kind of, the story kind of emerges through how you play the game, right?
Yeah.
So that's definitely something to be recognized. But I don't even think they could really capture that again. I mean, not to, sell Nintendo short or anything, but I mean, just with the way the first game, its narrative was framed, I don't think they'd really be able to get away with doing the whole flashback thing again,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but I guess we'll have to wait and see.
I think for a sequel, it would be nice to see a different approach, even though that approach worked perfectly for the first game. Now,
For sure.
before we change subject, something that I wanted to ask you guys. Nintendo has been doing this over the years now, that every year we have something related to Zelda.
Right.
And now that the sequel to Breath of the Wild is delayed, what do you guys think will have Zelda related this year? A remaster, a spin-off? What are you guys guessing?
Oh.
I mean, they're still, sitting on, what people have been asking for a while, right? Which is like, people will be more than happy with a, Twilight Princess HD port.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's
or
ready.
Wind Waker HD port. So that'll keep people, pleased for a bit. So.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm thinking also.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, personally, I don't actually think we're necessarily going to get something this year, just because I do think at some point in time, Breath of the Wild 2 was supposed to come out this year, whether that was at some point last year or whatever, or beforehand. So I don't think they necessarily had another big project planned. I think their last
that's
big
true.
thing before Breath of the Wild 2 was meant to be Skyward Sword, which I think is also a possibility because Breath of the Wild 2 seems to be pulling from that in some ways with the sky motif. In the latest story shot, there was a little clip where the Master Sword lit up, which showed a character, which was a hint at a character from Skyward Sword for people who weren't aware. So I think that was probably their last big plan before the sequel to Breath of the Wild, and now we're just going to be kind of sitting it out until then.
Yeah, one option that I haven't heard anyone mention, we got Mario Kart Live already. Maybe they'll do a remote-controlled Zelda thing.
That would be something.
Crossbow training too. Let's go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Plug your Joy-Cons into a crossbow and just go to town.
That's right.
Crossbow training fans unite.
Oh, man. Well, guys, at least it didn't get canceled altogether. Like our next subject. In case you haven't heard, E3 has been totally canceled this year. It was already kind of, maybe happening, maybe not really happening. Like the digital component was just gonna kind of be, the main focus. But now digital and in-person E3, none of it is happening this year. They say they're coming back in 2023. I guess we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But what are your guys' thoughts on this? Nicolas, how are you feeling about this whole situation?
I mean, pour one out for Video Game Christmas. It's officially dead. So yeah, they're done for this year. Supposedly coming back next year, which would be nice to see, even though if I'm not completely convinced that'll happen. It's sad to see to me because I've always loved E3, even with the whole corporate component that hasn't been so good. The fact that apparently organization hasn't been the best, to say the least. It was always such a fun time to have, about 4 days a year where you just knew you were going to get a ton of gaming announcements. And admittedly, it makes sense that it's gone because people started realizing that with the pandemic, everything moving online, they didn't necessarily need E3 as much, and they didn't need to pay E3's exorbitant prices just for admission to be able to fit their conference into the schedule. So I get why it's disappearing, but it's still kind of sad. And the Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest is kind of positioning itself as that alternative, where he's trying to make it into the big summer presentation for video games. But given what the show was like last year, I don't think that's going to be a perfect alternative. It doesn't seem like he has enough people on board that it will be able to match the same thing. We won't be able to have 4 days of announcements from all the major publishers and indie publishers and other publishers. It's not exactly going to be the same, and that's just sad to me.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff Keighley, love him or hate him. I mean, he's got a lot of influence in the industry, and the Summer Games show, maybe it hasn't always lived up to everyone's expectations, but now, that E3 is not going to be here this year, it does kind of leave a bit of a void, and it does kind of open up the door for, people like Jeff Keighley, or maybe someone else to come in and really, I'm sure there are plenty of, gaming websites that are trying to get their share of the exclusive announcements or reveals that would have been at E3, and so I'm sure we'll still get a lot of that news around that time.
Right.
But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it actually comes from.
Yeah, it just won't be as concentrated. Like, for instance, Nintendo, we have a general schedule for the Directs. We know they usually release one in February or March. They always have released one at E3, and they always release one in September. Now, obviously we've gotten the February one, and we know they'll release one in the summer, most likely, and they'll release one in September, but we no longer have that set date of, like, we can 100% expect a Nintendo announcement on, like, the 13th of July or whatever, or the 13th of June. Now it's going to be, well, let's just wait and see what they have planned. Because for some reason, I don't think they're likely to join the Summer Game Fest. They've always kind of marched to the beat of their own drums. I don't think they're too likely to join another newer presentation and just mark themselves under that.
Yeah, they've really haven't been at E3 proper in quite a while. They've just been doing their directs, and that's been working out great for them. I think it's the rest of the industry that's, maybe going to have a harder time getting their message out there.
I think at the end of the day, most of the companies, the biggest ones, Microsoft, Sony, they will end up doing exactly what Nintendo is doing, presentations just for them separately, where they can deliver the news directly from the companies to the fans. I don't think companies will rely on other presentations like the one for Jeff Keighley, because there's so many announcements and so many trailers that your announcement can just get lost in the middle of those other announcements. I think last year, if I'm not mistaken, Jeff Keighley managed to get a trailer for Elden Ring, which was something, of course, huge. But it's basically the only thing that we remember from the presentation. I don't think he managed to get something as memorable as what we had with E3 and all those presentations over the years. I think it was something that was bound to happen. Probably what I missed the most is the aspect of all those companies in a showroom showing gameplay and all those journalists getting the opportunity to play those games early. I think this was something that I really liked on E3, but we also have other shows on Europe and other countries that also do that kind of thing. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, those companies will end up doing their own things.
Yeah, well, and it also, I think another factor is just the role of E3 has changed. It used to be more of a trade show. It used to not really be this fan-centric thing.
Yeah.
It used to be where, retailers would go to hear from the companies about, we want, we have this new game coming out later this year. We want it on your store shelves in Target or Walmart or whatever. It used to be a lot more internal, and now it's this, it's kind of shifting to this big public focused thing, but they could never really figure out how to deal with all the crowds, and so it's kind of felt like it's been in this weird limbo for a little while now. So I'm personally not surprised that we're not seeing it this year. I really am curious what it'll look like next year if they do end up bringing it back, but I don't know.
I think the digital format
100%.
has just kind of overtaken how we sort of perceive and consume, new information basically, and how trailers are sort of presented. Because it's more exciting when you put it under a banner and the guise of an event, right? Even though it is just, that's all directs really are, right? Is we are just watching trailer after trailer after trailer. But there's a sense of excitement around that and building an event around it, versus just like putting these trailers, by themselves on YouTube or something.
Yeah.
And there's that sense of excitement that not only Nintendo now, but obviously Sony has State of Play, and then Xbox has kind of been doing their thing in a variety of formats. But even last year, when E3 was sort of there, except it was more, in a digital way, the way Xbox did their presentation is they still had a stage, but it was very small, right? It wasn't in an actual venue. It was probably just in front of like a green screen, really, if anything.
Yeah,
But they made it
yeah.
look
Yeah.
really, really nice. Like the presentation was really, really nice, and that excitement was still there. Of like, look at all these announcements, and like 90% of the announcements were also like, by the way, this new game that looks awesome, Xbox Game Pass. You know, so
Day
they're
one.
really pushing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, day one, all the time. World premiere and then day one. You always heard those, you know, in tandem with each other. So,
They're good at building that
but-
hype up.
oh, very much, very much. But you don't necessarily need E3 for that. I think the E3, that tag was more of like a sense of exposure, because I think E3 season, you know, it's like Nicolas was saying, where it's like it does feel like video game Christmas, right? Because it is my favorite time of the year, or I guess now was my favorite time of the year. And you know, now what is that next big thing? Because as we were saying, you know, Gamescom, or you know, sorry, not Gamescom, but the Summer Games event that Jeff Keighley likes to bring around is not anywhere near as memorable or exciting. So, I mean, sure, the announcements are there, the content's there, and Jeff Keighley's a very passionate man. We all know that. But the Summer Games event doesn't have that sort of strength or draw that something like the Game Awards would have that he also produces, right? So, or One Night Live that he does with Gamescom. So, it'll be interesting, you know, how things are sort of presented this year. But again, at the end of the day, I think Nintendo really changed the game a couple years ago, where they were very forward thinking of like, look, we're not going to be there anymore, but we'll still have a direct. And everybody was like, oh, why aren't you going to be there? But it's worked out for them, right? And now, you know, PlayStation's got State of Play, which is very much presented just like a direct format, if not, you know, almost 1-1, you know, and
Well,
yeah,
and
then
there are
Xbox has a variety of
there are
things to
these
do.
digital live streams that feel like they're happening like every other week. Like just this last week, there was the New Game Plus Expo, which a lot of folks probably haven't even heard of, but it was just, you know, it was kind of taking that Nintendo Direct format and just doing it for a bunch of indie games or games from smaller publishers that folks may not have had on their radar. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of that. I mean, I already feel like we're kind of at the saturation point for those types of live streams, but I wouldn't be surprised if we just see a ton of just like independent streams and independent events happening right around that same time.
Yeah, and then not to mention, like, I mean, even just for singular games, I mean, there was the Hogwarts Legacy State of Play not long ago, and even that, when I was watching that live, had like 120,000 people watching that. You know what I mean? So, like, never mind a big event. Now you can create these sorts of, you know, styles of events for just one single game. You know, never mind having a presentation for, you know, 10 new releases, you know, for the rest of the year or in the future. So, you know, we can create the hype around one single game. I mean, Hogwarts Legacy, obviously, you know, you have the, you know, the Harry Potter property behind that, right? So, like, I mean, obviously that's globally known, that's globally
A lot of people
loved.
tune in for that.
Exactly. But even with stuff that's not, you know, on the level of Harry Potter, you know, this billion-dollar franchise, you know, there's still been these live streams that have been for one particular game that still kind of draw that attention, even for ones that are meant for more indie-focused stuff, right? And indie is, you know, meant to be, you know, very smaller, lower budget, more tight-knit type stuff. But even those indie presentations, especially what Xbox has with ID at Xbox, right? They have their own sort of literally separate part of the company for that.
Right,
And
right.
that still brings in, you know, six-figure numbers, you know, and, you know, yeah. So it just gives everyone a chance to, you know, show their product, show their work, show their art, and still have a massive, massive audience behind it, you know, because every single one of these platforms has an install base of millions and millions and millions of people, right? So, like, you're going to have a wide demographic with a wide variety of interests, you know? So I think no matter how you present these, you're always going to have people there that are willing to watch, so long as you put the proper marketing behind it. And you don't really need E3 for that. E3 was just more of like the Comic-Con of video games, right? Of like, okay, we're going to have, you know, all these crazy announcements now, right? Well, even though Comic-Con's become like more of like, let's see a new movie trailer rather than just like,
Yeah,
let's
go
look
get
at,
things
you know,
signed and yeah.
right, exactly. You know, see you at Hall H. But yeah, it's not really necessary anymore. And I think people have grown content with being able to consume that content, at home, at their leisure, and not have to spend hundreds of dollars on tickets, because I don't know if you guys have been to conventions before, but I've been to conventions before, not just video games, but other, sorts of mediums and stuff. So it can be, depending on how it's handled, it can be a mess. It can absolutely be a mess. And there have been times, yeah, and there have been many times where I'm just like, oh, man, like I'd rather go home right now. And that's not a thought you want to have, especially when you've been building excitement for this weekend. And then, you go there and you're just like, I can't handle all these people. It's a mess. It's crowded. I can't get what I want. This is sold out. I'm in the artist alley. I can't see anything here because it's a mess. Oh, this person's gone. Versus like, if it's being consumed digitally where it's like you go to a website, okay, let me just click this, click that. And, you don't have to, at the most you have to worry about is, a website crashing, really, if anything. Otherwise,
that's true.
You're good to go.
I was gonna say, it's probably significantly less sweaty of an experience when you're just like chilling at home. Although, like, Dennis, we both live in Arizona, so, in the summertime, it's, we're screwed either way. It's gonna be hot. And Nintendo, I mean, they, just this week, actually, they've dropped a trailer for one of their upcoming games. Switch Sports got like a six-minute trailer this week.
Surprisingly
you guys all see this?
I didn't actually get a chance to watch it, actually, no. Even though I meant to.
Yeah, it was basically, they just said, here's all the 6 sports that are in the game. Golf is coming later this year. They kind of showed off some more of the mechanics. They're like, oh, in tennis, you can hit it this way, you can hit it that way. I don't know tennis terms, but... But yeah, and I mean, the game looks great, but yeah, they dropped a 6-minute trailer for that game this week.
They showed, I'm assuming with the 6-minute trailer, they showed a little bit of everything, at least what's going to be available at launch, because I know there's stuff coming post-launch.
Yeah, I mean, that we know of.
Right.
I mean, maybe there's more to the game than what they've showed off. They talked a little bit about some of the online modes come to the game, which actually seems fairly substantial, considering this is, a $40 release here in America on the eShop. I think it's a little more expensive if you get it physically because they're bundling in this leg strap accessory that lets you kick soccer balls
$10
later on. yeah,
like
something
really
like that. Yeah. I was just gonna say, like, like the game, like it's got a good energy to it. It's just interesting to see them, like what we were saying. Companies are just dropping trailers for their games, and Switch Sports comes out in a month, and here we are.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited for this game because I like the Wii Sports brands that we had on Wii and all those games that made a huge success at the time, and we also had on Wii U with Wii Sports Club, and now Nintendo is bringing it back on Switch. And I think those games are a no-brainer when you have 2 Joy-Cons and all the means to play exactly how it works on Wii. And it's the kind of game that every single person can play. A very interesting curiosity about this game is that at the moment, Nintendo doesn't sell any of the Switch games on Brazil officially via physical formats. They only sell games digitally here in Brazil. Because it's the import prices are really high. But Wii Sports will be the first Switch game to be sold in Brazilian stores in the physical formats. And that's really interesting because it comes with the leg strap and all of that. And I think that Nintendo is doing that because it's a game with a very broad appeal. So even for a country like Brazil where Nintendo is not so big, they are actually making the effort to bring the game to Brazil, and I hope they will bring other games in the future also. But it's a very interesting game, and I think Nintendo is hoping to make a big success with it because the Switch is so successful already. There are so many people who owns the console, and we know that those people are not only the hardcore market who like all those games like Zelda and main Mario games and etc., but also a lot of people who like party games, who like Mario Party, Mario Karts, and I think those people will easily buy a game like this with this price. So yeah, it's nothing groundbreaking, but I think it's a no-brainer for me. I'll definitely buy on day one.
Yeah, Luiz, didn't you play a little bit of the beta as well? Or I'm not sure if you can talk about what you played, but
I think I can't show footage, but I can talk about it. It was a really strange kind of online testing. Nintendo did a similar thing with Splatoon on Wii U, where you have like just 1 hour to play the game.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even choose which sport to play. It was completely random. I just pressed play, and it would select between tennis, chambara, which is the sword thing, and the other sport, tennis,
Bowling.
chambara. I can't
It was
remember
bowling.
what the other one.
There's bowling.
Bowling, yeah.
Okay.
Bowling was the best one because it was not. It was kind of bowling battle royale. So in every match, the person with the worst score would be eliminated, and it was really fun. It was really fun to play online. So that's probably the best part of the package. The rest is really similar to how it worked on the original game on Wii Sports Resort for the case of the sword, and the original Wii Sports on the case of tennis. So the game looks really nice. It's really fun. I think some people didn't like the new Miis. You can still use the older Miis, but there's the new ones who are a little more, I would say, millennial. I don't know. They are a little more modern looking.
Yeah.
They definitely
They've
look more
got,
like how like Xbox avatars are.
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
You know,
More
so-
expressive, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But they look nice, I think. I mean, they're refreshing. They don't have that sort of, immediately identifiable look that a Mii would have. They definitely are more stylized, in the case of like, I don't know, I feel like we've seen, games that have characters that look like that before, but they're still really refreshing and really nice. I mean, I do like the designs, at the end of the day.
Yeah, they were a bit of a shock when you first saw them, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like, what did they do with our Miis? They look so
Oh my
different.
god.
What is going on?
Cosmetic
Yeah, a lot of
surgery or something.
A lot of people were worried at first. It was
Nicolas, where are you at with the Switch Sports excitement? Did you play any of this game? Are you looking forward to it? It comes out in about a
Yeah.
month.
So I did saw the demo beta. It's under strict NDA. I'm considering it. It's interesting. Given that it's a party game, I would have to get quite a few people together, I think, to really get the maximum enjoyment possible out of this. Because I don't believe this will have that robust of a single player. Historically, that typically hasn't been really the case, but I mean, as it is, it's interesting. It's a Wii Sports game, basically. It's just interesting that it's coming so late in the Switch's life cycle, because this is a pretty basic thing to do. And it's got all the core components, but we're getting it 5 years into the Switch's launch, into the Switch's life. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it really feels like this should have been a launch game rather than 1-2 Switch or whatever we got.
Whatever that
You know?
nonsense was.
Yeah.
God, I hate that thing so much. That's a conversation.
Oh yeah,
does make
Dennis,
me
I
wonder-
definitely want to hear about how much you hate 1-2 Switch. That would be
Oh, yeah,
a
but
really
that-
good topic.
That's a podcast all on its own, my friend. I promise you. It's God, that game really upsets me. You want to talk about something that should have been packaged? It should have been that. Like that, the fact that game is sold at retail for almost full MSRP. Let me tell you, like that is one
really
of the
doesn't
biggest
make
scams.
sense.
Right.
No,
You
it
don't,
doesn't.
you don't
It's one
want
of
to
the biggest scams of video
pay
game history.
$50 to milk some cows and listen to some Ice Cubes.
No,
I
man,
never
like,
got to bought this game.
Same.
I played it briefly because at the time I worked for a tiny little mom and pop shop called GameStop, and so we had at the time, I don't know if it's still going, but at the time we could, as employees, you could kind of quote unquote rent games for a set amount of time, like 48 hours, and so I wanted to try it. Right, the Switch had just come out, and I was like, oh well, of course, while I'm playing Breath of the Wild, let me try this for a second. First of all, I was done in like 20 minutes, and not because I got tired of it, but no, literally, I did everything you could do in that game within 20 minutes. And not only that, but like it just was so pointless. I mean, it was a tech demo at best. Now, it was really neat because it showed what the Joy-Con could do, right? And
Right.
I still maintain that if that game brought anything, it is the fact that it's still the best use of HD Rumble I've seen to date. And I still have not seen any game or developer utilize the HD Rumble anywhere close to how it was utilized in 1-2 Switch, especially that one particular minigame where you could like tilt the Joy-Con, and you had to guess how many marbles were in the Joy-Con.
Oh,
And
that one sounds awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I always wanted to play that one.
yeah, that one was mind-blowing. That one was my favorite because like it actually felt like you could count them too, right? And then you'd have to guess on the screen, and it'd tell you if you were right or not. But like it actually felt like there were marbles like in the Joy-Con, and that still blows my mind to this day. The fact that it's just this rumble feature that's doing this, that makes it feel like there are physical marbles within this tiny little Joy-Con, But that was it, really. Otherwise, it's all just a tech demo. You can eat a sub sandwich. You can you can milk a cow if you want. You can, guess marbles and do whatever else you can,
You're really selling it
shoot
hard,
your
Dennis.
friends. Yeah, it's
There's also
it's worth every penny.
the infrared on the Joy-Con. I think it's the only game that uses it on the.
I think so. Yeah, I think
never
so.
saw
I mean. The entire
it might
game is
play
just
a
a
little
tech
bit
demo.
of a role in like the motion controls for other games. Like I'm sure there's something to it. I'd be surprised.
I think
like,
Labo uses it a lot. Nintendo
yeah,
Labo.
yeah,
That
that's
would
right.
make sense.
Labo uses it a ton. Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah.
Well, that game is coming out on April 29th, so we will probably be talking about it a little bit more once it gets closer. Another game coming out pretty soon is Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, which is a big hit of nostalgia for a lot of people who grew up with the Lego games, myself included. Luiz,
Yeah, I love those games.
have you been playing this? Who's been playing this?
Yeah, I've been playing it for review this last week. And I think the review will probably be out because I'm editing right now. So it'll probably be out by the time that this podcast came out. And I'm really impressed with the Switch version of the game because we saw a huge upgrade for the Lego games on this one. I think they are using a new engine. I read that somewhere. And the game really looks very good. The plastic objects are all really shiny and all of that. And if you love the Star Wars movies, it's a no-brainer. Really, it's a really fun adaptation, and they managed to recreate so many areas. I think every single set piece from the movies was recreated here with Lego pieces, of course. And it looks awesome. You can freely explore many of the locales, Tatooine, Coruscant, all the planets that you saw in the movies, from 1 to 9, even the Disney sequels, which never got a Lego adaptation. I think only Force Awakens, but now the
Yeah.
other two ones are also
Yeah, that's
adapted.
true.
So you can play all those movies and with the Lego sense of humor. It's really fun. It's nothing crazy. It still is a Lego game. It's a game for kids. So there's no great repercussions to dying. It's a really easy game. All the puzzles are pretty simple. But the upgrade on the quality of production really makes the experience something else. Really makes, I think, my favorite Lego game so far. You really can see that they took their time to develop this one.
Yeah, that's great to hear because I remember when this game was first announced, they were talking about, the Switch version is going to be just as much of a priority as the rest of the versions, which, you hear people say that a lot, but you never really know how it's going to turn out. So it's great to hear that. I mean, it's a fairly large game in scope, and it seems like it runs well.
It's not perfect. I think they prioritize image quality instead of frame rates, which would usually be a problem, but for this specific case, I think they did the right choice. Because when you look at the game, although the frame rate drops in some larger areas or some areas with more enemies, when you actually look at the games and at the cutscenes, it doesn't have that blurry look that we have on some ports on Switch, Sometimes Switch has some amazing ports like The Witcher 3. It's amazing that the game is running on Switch, but it is really blurry compared to the Xbox and the PS5 version. And when you look at the Switch version of Lego Skywalker, the image looks very crisp. I was very impressed by how it looks. So I think they made the right choice here. I had some problem. I think the game crashed 2 times with me. But I think they'll still release an update for the day one patch and all of that. So far my experience was pretty good on Switch.
Yeah, no, it's always good to hear when a big release like that with big names attached to it is actually has pretty good chance of doing well on the Switch. Dennis, Nicolas, you guys big Star Wars / Lego Star Wars fans?
Yeah, I just like Lego games in general, man. Like I've played just about every single Lego game with the exception of maybe like 3 of them, and especially with Lego Star Wars in particular. I mean, that was one of the first games I got on Xbox 360 when I first got one, you know, and it was alongside Lego Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And
I loved the Indiana Jones one.
Oh my
Those
God,
were
I
the
know.
first ones.
Yeah, and they were great, and I've just been a big fan of Lego games ever since then. I mean, they're definitely this new one looks incredible just because it seems like they've changed the formula. Because I've been saying for a while, like, you know, I mean, the Lego games have been formulaic, right? Where it's just like, here are the levels, here are just an ungodly amount of characters to choose from, and you know, but the last couple have been a lot more open, and this one especially looks different, especially from watching your preview video, Luiz. You know, now we have like an over-the-shoulder sort of camera perspective. It's really, really cool. It just looks like a third-person adventure game, but Lego now, instead of, you know, how they've kind of been before, where it's more, not necessarily top-down, but you definitely have a more wide scope that's not as, you know,
this is a little more
immersive or
cinematic.
interface. Yeah, exactly.
It feels a little more adventure, a third-person adventure right now. Not so much as, I don't know, the past games could be like a platformer, something more along those lines. And now the combat is really, I think it's the parts that I really liked, because you can go for a normal battle where you can make combos. It reminds me a little of the Batman Arkham games, where you are punching a lot of dudes and someone will come on your back and you have to press the right button to counterattack. So something along those lines. And the shooting is also really similar to a third-person shooter. You have to aim and all those stormtroopers. And there's a variety of enemies with different weapons. So I really enjoyed the battles. And also, it's just fantastic to play as a Jedi or a Sith like Darth Maul and just go killing everyone on your way. It's just a very satisfying feeling.
Yeah, that's like a key tenet of these Lego games. It's just a ridiculous number of playable characters.
Yeah, totally.
There's voice acting in this one too, isn't there? Right? So
yeah, there's voice actors, and it's not the originals, of course, but I think the voices are really good. And we have the original soundtrack from the movie from John Williams, so that's awesome. And
so are all of the characters because there's a ton of, like, you can play as like all these obscure Star Wars characters. Do they all have voice acting for this game?
I mean, I'm not sure, because not all characters appear on cutscenes, but I think all characters at least make some grunty noises, or if it is a monster or something like this, I think all of them at least have something. But it is impressive, even looking by the cutscenes. And there's something funny on this one. That you can unlock the mumble cutscenes, where because in early Lego games the characters wouldn't talk. It was just mimic.
Yeah,
so if you want to return to those times, there is an option where the characters, instead of talking, they just go.
That's awesome.
100%.
The whole game stays like this.
Okay, yeah, so that's a day one buy for me now, just because of that. Okay, does anyone remember from the original Lego Star Wars game? It's like this obscure memory that just like, it's like, used to be able to, like, I don't know if it was a cheat code or something unlockable, but used to like be able to go into like this like realistic Lego city for part of the game. Like it was like an Easter egg or something. Does anyone remember this? Am I crazy?
I don't remember it, but I don't know, because I played these games as a kid, so I don't remember a lot.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I definitely have some nostalgia for this game, like both of you, and so
Yeah, they were great.
Yeah. Well, that just about wraps up all of our big news topics for the week. We did want to go over briefly, you know, I know we talked a little bit about the 3DS and the various eShop issues, the drama of all of it last week. And I don't know about you guys, but I have been picking up some of the games that are digital only, or games that are kind of prohibitively expensive to get physically. So I was just curious, you know, with these eShops closing soon, have you guys picked anything up? Kind of the last hurrah before things shut down?
I haven't really. I used to spend an ungodly amount of money, like on the eShop, especially like in the 3DS days, but I haven't done that in quite some time. And honestly, with how much I've bought and spent on the 3DS, it's more of looking at what can I buy that I don't already have? So there hasn't been much in terms
You're like,
of
"I'm
like the
pretty much
store
set."
closure. Yeah, like I used to be crazy with it, and you know, now I'm a lot more reserved. But on the 3DS days where 3DS was my life, man. Like that was, you know, all day, all night was just 3DS. Brought it with me everywhere, you know, for Street Pass and stuff like that. Wanted to hit all those other people that had 3DS, and people would have their 3DSs with them in places you wouldn't even expect. I mean, you know, I just go in for like a quick coffee at Barnes and Noble, and I'd get like 4 hits right there, you know, on my 3DS. I'm like, okay, and just places like that. But even the bank and stuff, it's crazy. But
The good old days.
yeah, oh yeah, and there's definitely stuff that I want to get, but you know, at the same time, I'm you know, wondering to myself, like, you know, can I live without them? And there's been a lot of stuff, especially from Capcom, that they've done really well in porting just about everything to the Switch, and there's been a lot of ports just in general to the Switch, and so there's very little for me to worry about except for maybe some of those digital only titles by either Atlas, Sega, or Capcom, really. Like I know
Yeah, there's a couple. Yeah.
yeah, and like I really want, like what we still don't have on the Switch are any Etrian Odyssey, and I miss those games. I love those games, the Etrian Odyssey games, and a lot of other games too, like Stellar Glow, and yeah, just stuff from like Atlas and like, you know, Furyu and
Some of
NIS.
the smaller RPGs that people maybe kind of forgot about, or a lot of them are going to be lost to time, because some of these games only got digital-only releases.
That's
you know,
right.
one of the ones I just picked up that was a digital-only release here in the States was Rhythm Heaven Megamix, which is like a greatest hits Rhythm Heaven compilation.
Yeah.
Which is such a great series. I have so much love for it, and it's just crazy that, you know, this game is just never gonna. You won't be able to. You know, new players won't be able to get it legally here in the States.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. There's a lot of stuff that I got physically as well. Like I know you can get what is it? Speaking of rhythm games, like Theatr Rhythm Final Fantasy on 3DS. I got that physically though, because physically I found a physical copy for $5 versus like the eShop version like only ever goes on sale down to like $20 for some reason every time it goes on sale. Like with how
I
old
just
that
picked up
game
the
is.
same thing. Yeah, it was
but that
really
game is
cheap
great.
physically.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know why, but digitally it's like Square Enix just will not drop that thing past 20. I don't know why.
Luiz, are you big on the 3DS, Wii U? I don't really know. Like, I know you said Nintendo's just kind of bringing more of its stuff to Brazil. Did you were you pretty plugged in with these?
Yeah, at the time with 3DS, Nintendo was on Brazil officially. They left Brazil on the middle of Wii U lifetime and returned on the Switch lifetime, but only as digital. So those sales on the eShop also affected Brazil. The Atlas one, Capcom one. Honestly, I didn't get neither of those games, but I'm really considered, at least because I know Atlas was on fire on the 3DS. They put a lot of great JRPGs there, and a lot of them I had never played. I never played Etrian Odyssey, Shin Megami Tensei, none of those. So it could be a great opportunity for me to play those games for the first time. So I'm definitely looking into it. And I think it's something other companies should also do, because some of those games will be unavailable forever. And I mean, I know it's a lot to ask Nintendo to put their games on that level of price, but it would be so. It makes a lot of sense, because you guarantee a less wave of revenue from those games that will not be available anymore, and a lot of people could get the opportunity to play some of those games. A lot of 3DS games I didn't get the opportunity to play, like Kirby Planet Robobots is one that I really would like to play, and it would be nice to have those games on sale also. On the Wii U, I speaks about in the last podcast. I got the Metroid Prime trilogy, which was something that I really wanted to play for a long time. And when they announced that the eShop would close, I immediately downloaded it, and I've been enjoying it a lot. But so far, that's it. I'm still looking into it.
Yeah, no, it's can be a little overwhelming. You know, it's a fine line between feeling like, oh, you know, I want to pick up a few of these games I've always been interested in, or oh, I gotta snap up everything I can and spend way too much money because they're all going away. It's that FOMO, that fear of missing
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
Yeah.
What about you? What about you,
crazy.
Nicholas?
So personally, nothing super recent. There's still a few things I'm probably gonna pick up before. I think they stopped selling them or at least you can't put any funds starting in May, and then they stopped selling it next year, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, it's
there's
like
a
you can't
few
add
things-
credit cards in after May, and then
Right.
but you can still add like eShop credit up
You
through
can
like
add
August.
money through the My Nintendo account, I believe. So you can still
Yes.
theoretically buy things at that point, but it all goes offline like early next year, I think.
Yeah, that's my
for the most
understanding.
part. I got a lot on 3DS and Wii U, same as Dennis, I think. Probably not as much. But I don't have too much left. The one things I did pick up recently, last year before Metroid Dread released, I ended up picking up Metroid Zero Mission and playing both Fusion and Zero Mission before that came out. Because
Beautiful.
there's no other way of really getting those games. Other than that, I have the Metroid Prime Trilogy already. Thankfully. I actually ended up playing through the first game not that long ago and for the first time and really enjoying it like Luiz did. That's something for another day, I suppose. I don't really have too much, to be honest. Probably just a few GBA games, maybe some rarer DS games on the Wii U. And on the 3DS, there's just not too much left. It's still going to be a real shame missing, I think Dennis had mentioned the Etrian Odyssey games. I tried out a few of their demos back in the days, and those games always struck me as being very interesting. Even if I never ended up buying any of them, they were just very, very unique types of games I never really experienced anywhere else, and those being kind of gone is going to be a real shame.
Yeah, those games, and I wonder too, like if they were to port one. Obviously, you can build one from the ground up for the Switch, but if they were to port one of those to the Switch, how that would work, because those games were very much a two-screen type of game, right? Where you used typically the bottom screen, you wouldn't have a map. So how it would work is you would go through this dungeon, tile by tile, and you would have to basically create your map as you go, and you can put down, various icons and stuff like that. So, and then you'd go back to town, your hub, and then kind of, prepare for your next run and go deeper and deeper and deeper into these dungeons before you inevitably get to the end. But again, you could build them from the ground up for the Switch, but porting those games I think would be very difficult because I think it would be sort of annoying to constantly have to, I'd probably open up a separate menu to create that map, unless you have like an auto map creation that you can sort of substitute for that bottom screen, which
take away from it, though.
We've seen, and we've seen tiled dungeon games before. On the Switch, Lost Child is a good example of that, and was it Strangers?
There's been a couple smaller ones.
Yeah,
but
and,
nothing on the scale of like an Etrian Odyssey. It's just one of those things that feels like, are they ever going to bring it back now that the 3DS is going away? It's going to be one of those relics of the.
Yeah, it's just really depressing because Atlus's output on 3DS isn't anywhere. It was just so substantial, and on Switch they've maybe not ported, but they've published maybe one or two games on there, and I'm like, guys, on 3DS you had 5 games every year, and all of them were hits. All of them were hits, to me anyways. I mean, because I loved every single one of them. But on Switch, it's just where is that Atlus content at? I mean, sure, there's Persona 5 Strikers, there's 13
Sentinels. That's coming soon.
on the way. Yeah,
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah, so that'll be exciting, especially for those that haven't played it on PS4 just yet. So now it's finally coming to Switch. But Atlus's output on Switch is minuscule compared to how it was on 3DS. They were almost if you had to make a sort of holy trinity of the 3DS that wasn't Nintendo, Atlus would definitely be one of them, for sure, in terms of 3DS support, without a doubt. But yeah, I don't know, it's depressing. It's depressing because there's a lot of great games there, not only from them, but from a lot of other studios that are either digital only or, are going to be interesting to see if they ever get released outside of the 3DS, because a lot of games there were developed with a sort of two-screen format and that sort of philosophy of utilizing both screens, right? So,
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Right.
Well,
At least
folks,
the one. Sorry.
Oh yeah, go
I
ahead,
just
Nicolas.
mention the one positive thing is that at least right now a lot of these publishers are putting their games on sale. I know Capcom had a big sale recently, and like we've mentioned, Atlas is having a pretty big sale right now, I believe. So even though it's sad these games are going away, if you want to pick them up, now's a very good time to do that.
It may be the last time some of these games ever go on sale. Like, and I
Really
feel like
low
I can
prices.
confidently say that. Yeah. Well, folks, you heard it here. Consider this your official reminder from the Nintendo Everything staff. If you want your 3DS and Wii U digital games, go pick them up while you still can. All right. Well, I think that about does it for this week. Does anyone have any closing thoughts? Anyone playing anything interesting?
Just still playing a bunch of Kirby. Kirby is just amazing. I love Kirby. So, but yeah, no, just one little, addition to the 3DS eShop, because, we were mentioning earlier how, like, again, I think Luis had mentioned that, it's, Nintendo will probably never drop, their prices to how everyone's, been dropping them. But, I mean, look, it really is one of those situations where it's like everything must go, So, I mean, why not, make everything just $5 or less, have people go absolutely crazy with that instead of keeping them at $20, $30, $40 and only sell, 100 copies of that, where, if you make it $5, you could sell, 100,000 copies of that. Because obviously, 100,000 at $5 a piece is a lot more than 100 at $20 a piece, So, like just...
You should go work for their accounting department, Dennis. I think you've got it figured out.
But that's the thing, is I'd get fired because there's too much logic behind it.
Makes too much sense.
Yeah, this makes too much sense. That's the thing. So
This is not a very Nintendo approach. Yeah.
No. It's got to be unorthodox. It's got to be something that's, that no one else would do. At least in a, in a traditional format. I mean, obviously we saw how they handled folders. So,
yeah. There's always the normal way and then the Nintendo way.
That's right.
Yep. Keeps things exciting. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to the second episode of Nintendo Everything Refresh. It's been a great time. We will be back next week with more news, more impressions, and just anything going on in the world of Nintendo. Thanks so much. We will see you soon.